My social media is Cyreld_M. I wanted to be a part of Letters with My Mama just because the conversation is necessary nowadays. So I'm excited to share, I'm excited to learn, I'm excited to grow, and I'm excited to inspire. So that's why I'm here. Okay, well, I'm originally from Boston. I'm not from Baltimore. I grew up being raised by my grandparents. I was adopted by my grandparents at the age of 6. So my home dynamics was very loving, I can say that. I was the youngest. My grandparents had 4 biological kids and they adopted 4, and then I came years later. My home dynamic was very loving and kind and outgoing and smart, and yeah, just a good dynamics of growing up, I can say. I know who my adopted parents are, but I guess at the time when I was 6, they just didn't want to be parents anymore. So a little bit backstory of that. Basically, my parents were high school sweethearts, got married very young, and my mom ended up getting pregnant. Like a lot of young moms, sometimes you're not either ready to be a parent or don't want to be a parent. And of course she tried for 6 years because I was with my parents for 6 years, and then all of a sudden she just made the decision that, I don't want to be a mom anymore. My biological dad, same thing, I don't want to be a dad anymore. So the best thing that they did for me was, and I remember it was in the wintertime in Boston. And Boston is extremely cold in the wintertime. I had on blue pajamas. And I remember my dad dropping me off at my grandmother's house late night. And that was the last time I saw him. And that was the last time I saw my mom for a long time. But growing up, I had a normal childhood, school, friends, camps, travel, things like that. It was pretty good, so yeah.
So, I would identify your 6-year-old self as going through a childhood trauma.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you feel about that?
Now that I'm an adult, absolutely. Childhood trauma, abandonment issues, trust issues, the whole notion of if my parents don't love me, nobody in this world is gonna love me. I mean, of course, you go through all of that. My grandparents did a good job at having the conversation with me, making me feel loved. But there was still that missing piece, of course. They're my grandparents, they adopted me, but my DNA comes from Cynthia Gerald. It does not come from Dorothy Dennis and Willie Lee Dennis. So of course I had questions, and thank God for therapy. I started therapy in high school because another component of my life is that I'm an openly lesbian woman. So I came out at the age of 13. To my grandparents. That dynamic, that story is interesting. Of course, my grandparents are older, from the South, very religious. They didn't even believe that men and women should even be living together if they're not even married. So here I am, 13, 14 years old, coming home like, hey guys, I'm gay. What's gay, Cyreld? I like girls. What do you mean you like girls? Like as your friend, like all of that. So that dynamic added to me being adopted played a whole huge aspect of my life. Oh, okay, I need to go see a therapist. Back then, I didn't know it was called a therapist. I had like a guidance counselor at school, things like that. So I've always been going to therapy, into therapy, talking about my feelings, because I'm a big believer talking leads to healing. That's my saying that I say to myself. So yeah, definitely coming out, being adopted, all that played a part in my more so high school days into young adulthood. My grandparents were accepting of my sexuality, but still had questions because of course it's new. From what I know of back then, I was the only openly gay woman in my family, or a young adult at that time in my family. So of course people had questions like, what does that mean? Can you have kids? It was just so many questions at the time. My biological father knew. He really didn't care. My biological mother, on the other hand, totally different notion. Very judgmental, did not understand, didn't want anything to do with me at that point in time. But being that I lived with my grandparents and they adopted me, they never once shamed me for it. We had to have those type of tough conversations. They were willing to go to my guidance counselors and things like that just to get a better understanding of who I was. And of course, that whole notion of it's just a phase, you're 14, you don't know any better, you'll outgrow it. No, never outgrew it. On top of that, my biological father suffers from addiction and mental health. To this day, my biological father is addicted to crack cocaine, heroin, and he's an alcoholic. Bipolar, schizophrenia, PTSD. So mental health, all in my DNA, all in there. And once again, because I started with a guidance counselor young in life, it helped me in some cases to navigate through my years and years and years of therapy, of life experience, because life happens as you grow older, you experience different things. So I already had the foundation of therapy, guidance counselor, talking through my feelings, because I knew at a young age, you're going through some things, you know, you do have your biological family around, you're dealing with abandonment issues, you know, your biological mom left you but went on to have 2 other kids after you, so what does that mean? So I always knew that I needed to talk to somebody about it. I don't know why, but I just always knew that I did. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom found out that I was gay, she was not happy at all. It was, you're going to hell. You're not going to be loved, or you're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing the family. You're going against God. It was a lot of these things, and it was hard. It was really, really hard hearing that from a person that gave birth to you. You know, but at the same time, I had the notion of you're not even biologically my parent anymore, so you really don't have anything or right to say anything. But because I was still searching for that validation, you know, of course what she said hold weight. I'm 39, so in my entire life, I've only had one boyfriend my entire life. And that was only because there was a period of time where my mother came to me and said, you know what? I want a relationship with you, but under the conditions of you have to be straight. You have to be heterosexual. So of course at that time I'm like, well, you know, it's my mom, you know, like I want a relationship with her. I'm looking around, my friends, they have relationships with their mom. They're doing this, they're doing that. Sure, I can do that. No. Of course I ended up dating a great guy, great guy. The relationship lasted 2 years, but 2 years too long because 1, I was living a lie, and 2, I truly hurt somebody that did not deserve to be hurt in that way because I wanted to make somebody else happy. And I vowed to never, ever, ever do that again. You know, nobody deserves that type of treatment. And that's when I made a decision to say, you know what, whether it's my mom, family member, friend, whoever, I'm going to be myself, my most authentic self. I'm going to love who I want to love. And if you have an issue with it, then that's on them. That's their problem. So when I was in a relationship with the guy, of course, me and my mom's relationship, it was good. But it wasn't. Like, it was a mask, you know, because I wasn't my true self. I wasn't able to be my true self. When I ended that relationship, it went back to how it was. You're being disrespectful. you're not being respectful of me and my wants. I'm your mother, do what I say. And that's when I made the decision to not cut her off totally, but put some distance between her and And yeah, that's when that coming out story with my mom is, with me, it was hard. Now the crazy part is, now of course I have two younger siblings. So my sister is 25, my brother's 22. My sister's gay. So and she hates this, I have a little running joke with my bio mom, like, all your children like women. And she hates it. She hates when I say that, but I say it just because it's true. And I look at my coming out story and how I was able just to be myself, and my sister's coming out story totally different than mine was. My mom was a little bit more receptive. She wasn't as angry. She wasn't as judgmental. She was able to have certain conversations with my sister that she wasn't able to have with me. So I kind of paved the way a little bit for my sister to be able to come out and say, hey, this is who I am, et cetera, et cetera. So looking back, it was all for a purpose. I didn't know what the purpose was then, the backlash, the anger, the things like that. But now in my life, I look back and say, okay, that's why I went through that, because my sister was going to go through that. And it just helped ease her journey with it.
Right.
So I didn't go to Boston Public School. I was a part of the METCO program in Massachusetts. Basically, it was where inner city kids were bused into like suburban areas. So I lived in the city of Boston. My high school was about an hour and 10 minutes away. So I went to an all Caucasian high school. Only 80 black kids total in my total high school. As far as acceptance goes, I was accepted. They had like the LGBTQ clubs, things like that. As far as my core friends that I have, once again, there's only 80 black kids in my total high school. Only 14 of us graduated. They were accepting of it. They were cool about it, we talked about it. They never felt any kind of way. So I never felt, I guess, judged or discriminated against as far as my sexuality at school. But being at an all Caucasian high school, of course, you experience the racism, things like that. That I did experience there.
Right.
Did I love myself? No, I didn't. I was still growing. At 15, I was definitely a tomboy. At 15, I didn't know what loving myself honestly looked like. Was I loved at home? Yeah, but can I sit here and truly say at 15 I knew what loving myself looked like or was? No, not at all. No. I was still going through the motions of home life and abandonment issues and the trauma of being dropped off in the middle of the night, even though it had been years later. That's something that you don't let go of. You don't forget. You will always have to work through that, because I still work through that now in my adult life. So no, I did not love myself at the age. I didn't even know what that was. Now, to be honest with you, now, today, in this present age, now.
And what does that look like, your journey?
What does that look like now? Saying no. I'm still active in therapy. I'm always going to be in therapy. Not as frequent, but just check-ins, just because of things that I go through in my life, mental health that I have, et cetera, et cetera. But I just learned in therapy 6 months ago that I can say no, especially when it comes to relationships. I've never known that. Never. So that looks like me saying no. That looks like me being patient with myself. That looks like me giving myself the grace that I give others. That looks like me showing up for myself in the most authentic way. That looks like me being accountable for my stuff in the most authentic way. It's now that I'm truly learning to love me, all of me, even when I have good days or bad days, even when I make mistakes, even when I mess up, because I mess up. Now I'm loving me. Now.
So, let's see. Talk to the girl. She's looking in the mirror. She doesn't like what she sees. Maybe she's being bullied.
Right.
Maybe she's sitting at the lunch table and she's looking over the popular kids, quote unquote popular kids and stuff. What can you offer her that she can start feeling now? She doesn't have to take into her 20s and.
Well, first thing I would tell her is that I love you. We take those words for granted. So I would definitely tell her that I love her and that I would give her a hug, and I would tell her it's okay to have those feelings. You won't always feel that way. It's okay to talk about it. I would create a safe space for her to express how she's feeling and why she's feeling the way that she feels. I would tell her to let's stop in this moment of getting into the mindset of comparing, because that travels with you into adulthood, and it's easy to get caught up in that notion of comparing. I'm not good enough. I don't feel loved. I'm not light skinned. That's a whole nother conversation. And that you're supportive and that you're enough. I would pour into her as much as that I possibly can, because it's so important. It's just important to pour into people. I would tell her, you're not alone. That's a huge thing. We feel alone at that time. We feel like nobody knows exactly what we're feeling. And I would tell her, once again, talking leads to healing, and find somebody that you trust with who you are, that you can talk to, and talking and support, definitely.
One thing I forgot to ask you when you were talking about your parents, do you feel like the dynamic of, and your grandparents, growing up, your parental relationships carried into your romantic relationships?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I used to be so proud and say, yep, I'm adopted. I have the best grandparents in the world. They're loving, they're kind, they're supportive. But when I really sit and think, I have the toxic traits of parents that are controlling, negative, thought love meant you do what I say, and not trusting. I entered a lot of relationships and situationships saying that I trust the person when honestly I didn't, So yeah, your relationships that you have with your parents definitely shape your relationships that you have as an adult, whether romantically or platonic, and it's tough as an adult to unlearn and unpack all of that. But it's necessary. You have to unlearn, you have to unpack. Now where I am now, yeah, I've had to unlearn so many things as far as what I want my future relationships to be, who I want my future wife to be. But yeah, my relationship, more so with my biological parents, definitely played a part in how I treated women in my life before. Like I said, the not trusting, the controlling aspect of things, just the negative traits. Yes, I was raised by my grandparents, adopted by them. They were fun and kind and loving and a hugger, but like I said, ultimately my DNA comes from Cynthia and Gerald, and they did the best they could, So yeah, when you know better, you do better, and I'm learning a lot of things now. So my virginity story, once again, my entire life I only had one boyfriend, and that was at the age of 22. So I guess you could say I lost my virginity at 22 with a guy. And even with that, we was together for 2.5 years. In those 2.5 years, we was only intimate twice. Just because, once again, I'm not attracted to men in that way. Once again, I was only in that relationship because I wanted a relationship with my mother. But as far as women goes, I started, well, I was young. Looking back, it wasn't sex that I was doing, but I knew I liked women more in that way, connecting more in that way. So I was about maybe 13 years old. So 13 up until now. I mean, yes, I have been with quite a few women in my life. I have been. Love versus lust. I have experienced lust before, thinking that it was love. It's two totally different things. To me, lust is just the physical aspect of things. What I thought was love wasn't. What I thought was lust wasn't. To me, love now, knowing what love is now, people throw that word of unconditional love now, what unconditional love is. And I used to throw it around too. But as I'm growing now, unconditional love is just the freedom that you give somebody to be their most authentic self. You don't own people. You don't own anybody. You don't control anybody. It's like, if I love you today and you do something to make me mad tomorrow, then I'm taking that love back. I used to be like that. That's very controlling, you know? So yeah, my definitions of love have changed, and how I love people have changed, and how I want people to love me have changed. You don't know what love is until you experience life. Life experience is the best teacher. To me, in my opinion, it's the best teacher. Looking back, I lusted over a lot of women in a negative way, thinking that I was the best friend, best girlfriend, best situationship, whatever our titles was at the time, but it wasn't. It was very negative. It wasn't healthy at all. And I've had some healthy relationships with women too, you know, but love and lust, I don't think there's a true definition of it. I don't think you can tell a person what you're going through right now is love or lust. I think it's your own personal experience, and sometimes you have to experience certain things. Well, for me, that's what it was. I just had to experience certain things.
So talk about your greatest heartbreak, how you healed from it, what you learned from it, and what you can tell somebody going through something similar.
My greatest heartbreak was when my grandmother passed away in 2013. Losing a parent is a pain that, for me, never ends. I still remember it to this day. It was July 2013. I was in Boston. I was staying at my grandparents' house. And she woke up in the middle of the night, having to go to the bathroom. She ended up falling. She ended up having a stroke. So she was in the hospital for a week and a half. That week and a half, I did not leave her side. If I start crying, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was that week was hard. And of course she passed. I thought I experienced heartbreaks before, of course, breakups and relationships, but watching someone that you love take their last breath, a parent, it's something that you will never forget. It changes you. It changed me so much that she passed July of 2013. August of 2013, I quit my job. I sold all my furniture. I put 3 states in a hat. I said, whatever state I pull out, that's where I'm going. That's how I ended up here in Baltimore. The other states were Maryland, Chicago, and Georgia. It had to be a city state because I'm a city girl at heart. But yeah, it changed me so much that I I left. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell a soul. I just packed up my clothes and needed to start over. I fell into a really deep, dark depression when I moved here in 2013. I rented a room and I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. Thank God for savings because it's just me. Yeah, deep dark depression. And at that time, I'm new here. I don't have a therapist here. I didn't have any friends here. But I had to get out. So I moved here September. I really didn't start getting out until January. And the reason why I had to get out was because money started running low. You know, I need to find a job. And but it's not something that you get over. I still haven't gotten over that. And then in 2015, my grandfather passed away. You know, so I lost two parents within 2 years. You know, and I don't get over that. It's a day-by-day process still with me. I feel like something's missing in my life sometimes. Are they here with me spiritually? Yes, but I would love the opportunity to just be able to call them and talk to them and, I don't know, get advice or have that parental aspect in my life that I don't really have. So that has been one of my greatest heartbreaks. It's truly losing parents. Of course, relationships too. You know, relationships is hard when you break up with somebody. I'm recently going through a breakup now. And it's been difficult. It's been hard, you know, but it's just honestly one foot in front of the other. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm okay every day because I'm not. It's one moment at a time for me. I know a lot of people say one day at a time, but for me, it truly is one moment at a time. And how I deal with the pain, hurt, grief is therapy. I love my therapist. I've developed a great relationship with my therapist here. She's available for me whenever I need her. You know, therapy for me saved my life. Therapy for me just changed my life. Once again, I believe talking leads to healing. And working out helps me too. Talking to and being vulnerable and transparent with people in my life. But have I gotten over it? I don't think I ever will. I think I will just take things one moment at a time. But to say how I got over heartbreak of parents, I won't ever. Will I get over heartbreak of losing a relationship? Absolutely. It's a different type of pain. To me, it's a different type of pain. So yeah, just one moment at a time. Mid-20s, my moods would go up and down. One minute I'm good, next minute I'm not. One minute I'm happy, next minute I'm sad. So it's like, what's going on with me? I know mental health runs on my dad's side. Once again, my dad is a substance abuse user. He's bipolar, schizophrenic, depression, anxiety, all of that stuff. So I went to a doctor one day and I say, hey, this is my family history. Can we run some tests? Let's see what's going on. I'm bipolar 1, and then I suffer from seasonal depression. Seasonal depression kicks in more so during the winter months because there's not enough sun. And then holidays recently for me have just been sucked because of grief, loss, death, etc., etc. So yes, therapy helps with my mental capacity. It's not until now that I've been vulnerable enough to talk openly about my own mental health, being bipolar, because a lot of people think, oh, you're just crazy, or et cetera, et cetera. So educating myself and others, what exactly does that mean? Showing people that I can, and anybody can, live a successful, loving life with a mental health condition. You know, I am an openly gay Black woman who is bipolar and suffers from seasonal depression, but I also have a full-time job. I also am able to provide for myself. I have a home. You know, I have so many other things. And with therapy, it helps me navigate through all that. Therapy helps me break down those negative self-talks that I have with myself and regarding my own mental health because of what society may think it looks like, you know. So when I feel myself start to think, well, society thinks, you know, I'm a little crazy just because I'm bipolar. When I start that negatively, I immediately either reach out to my support system or my therapist because it's necessary. It's easy to get caught up with the outside world, quote unquote, thinks. You know, I think nowadays a lot of people is just throwing around mental health, toxicity, et cetera, without truly doing the work and truly sitting with people and having the hard conversations and truly figuring out what exactly is this? What is bipolar? What is seasonal depression? What is depression? What is anxiety? You know, so yeah, I truly am an advocate for therapy. I know it's not for everybody. I know a lot of people think therapy is not needed, especially if you're religious, and that's fine too. But for me, I have both. I go to therapy and I pray. I have a whole shirt that says that, you know. So for me, both work. And will I always be in therapy? Absolutely. Probably not as much as I have been in my younger days, but I know that I will always go to therapy because it's maintaining my mental capacity. I go to the gym to maintenance my physical, but therapy helps with my emotional and mental capacity that I need. It's like little tune-ups here and there. So, yeah. Finances. I'm just, once again, learning how to save now at 39. Finances, mental health, I truly wish that they would add that to the school's curriculum. I think those two for me that I would say, yeah.
So what do you know now about finances that you wish you known when you graduated high school, like walking into the real world?
Save. Save. Truly develop a positive relationship with money. Find out about, you know, what credit is, what does it mean, assets and liabilities. It's so much that I'm learning now that I never knew. And I look back sometimes and I'm like, did my grandparents not sit me down and teach me these things? And the answer is no. They didn't. They did the best that they could, but life happens. You know, what do you do when your bills are more than what you have in your bank account? What are your other options if you don't have a mother or father to go to? If you get credit cards, do you need to pay them on time or can you pay them late? It's so many just things I wish I would have known then, and I'm just figuring it out now. But yeah. So of course I went to an all-Caucasian high school, so I just knew I wanted to go to a good old HBCU. Right. So I went on a college tour, and I ended up going to South Carolina State University. Met amazing people there. My first time away from home, did not get homesick at all. I was excited, you know. It was the first time I knew about homecomings and the band and how to play spades. Like, I felt like there was a world out there that I did not know about, and I'm experiencing this at, 18, 19 years old. I had an amazing time in college. I made amazing friendships there. Of course, relationships there. Of course, the whole notion of, drinking alcohol, I experienced that there. I had the last drink that I took was actually over 20 years ago in college. I guess looking back, I overdid it. I had a little bit of everything at the house party, but from that experience, I can't say I never touched a drink again. And it's just a personal choice. But yeah, I loved college. I had a great time in college. It's one of the best decisions that I made, to actually go to a college away from home, because you do meet new people, you experience new things. So yeah.
So what do you wish you can go back and tell your teenage self that would have helped you thrive more in your 20s more than survive?
Don't live for somebody else. I'm enough just as I am. You're gonna grow and go through things in life, but truly be your most authentic self if you can. I've always been a writer. I've always been a talker. Talk more, I can say. Talk more. Have more conversations with my grandparents and my parents too. Have more of that open dialogue, because there's so many questions that I have now that I can't ask my grandparents, because they've since passed. I would tell my 15-year-old self that you don't know it all, because at one point in time I thought I did know it all. You definitely don't know it all, and that's okay. You're gonna experience grief and hurt and failures, and that's okay too. And don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Those are the three things those are some of the things that I would tell my 15-year-old self. And I would also tell my 15-year-old self, like, you are enough. And tell myself then that every single day. Because the abandonment issues that I went through, I didn't think that I wasn't enough. It's not until recently that I know that I'm enough. Here we are 20 plus years later, and I'm saying I'm enough, and yeah, so. Accountability. I used to play the victim a lot. And having good people in my life that will tell me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. And therapy, honestly, but you got to do the work. Like, that's the thing. It doesn't work unless you do the work. And the work is hard. The work is ugly. The work is disgusting. The work doesn't feel good at all. But it's necessary for growth. So, and treating people how I want to be treated, being that friend, being that accountability friend, being that reliable friend, being that trustworthy friend. But all that stems from, well, do you trust yourself? Are you reliable for yourself, Cyreld? So it all comes back to just truly doing the work, and being consistent with doing the work. So I've been just doing the work. As far as romantically wise, being accountable for my part in things that have ended, things that may have played out in a not so good way. It's easy to blame the other person. It's easy to say, the other person did this, which is why I did this. Just truly focusing on myself and my own healing, and truly focusing on self and healing. And no excuses. We give ourselves excuses sometimes, so I'm learning that for me, I become a much better person just by being more honest and being more vulnerable. and saying I'm sorry, you know, and changing my behavior. That's the best apology. Changed behavior is the best apology. It's the only apology. It's the only apology. So, yeah. Final takeaway is that we are all beautiful, imperfect humans, you know, and just to give ourselves grace and kindness and forgiveness, and to give others that too. I'm grateful for platforms like this because I'm allowed to be myself, you know, and I know there's a little girl out there somewhere who looks like me, who is adopted, who is struggling with their sexuality, or who has came out, you know, and it's hard. Like that's a whole nother conversation of being Black and gay in America. It's hard, you know, but I do want people to know that it is possible. You know, there are people out there who will support you and who will love you unconditionally, you know, and you're not alone. You know, you're not alone. So